you join me in the small village of Glyn Ceiriog, which, if you've watched my hardest 100 kilometres in the UK video, you may be familiar with. And today I'm going to feature a climb which is long overdue on this channel, Church Hill. The official Strava segment for which started at that roundabout you just saw. So it starts with a false flat, but it is 200 metres of elevation. You see that the K and QOMs are held by my two climbing heroes. And in this area, Church Hill really does strike fear into the heart of locals. Almost all of us have a story about having to get off and push our bikes up here at some point or other. It may not be quite as hard as some of the climbs in the Conway Valley, for example, or maybe Ashgwenant on the other side, but it's really tough. I have done it in that hardest 100 kilometres video, but I didn't really feature it particularly, and I thought it deserved its own feature. In the ride I'm doing today, I'm doing it as the third effort of 3, so my power will be relatively poor, I'm afraid. But I've never done it properly. My best time on here, I was already over 100 miles into a tough ride with my dad, so I thought I could give it a good punt. You've just seen me enter the steep bit, and that should be obvious, if not from the footage itself, just from how quickly my speed hemorrhages. And from here on up, it's just a matter of survival for about the next kilometre. All of the gradient estimations seem a little bit iffy, so all I can say is, when you're riding it, it really feels like you're doing 20% and upwards for the best part of the next kilometre. So, indeed, survival mode may be engaged. I still tried to put a decent amount of power down, but something I've been trying recently is a little bit of pacing. I know that doesn't sound like me at all, but in the Conway Valley, I realised that I don't have to be doing 400 watts to get up these things, and that just kills me for the end. So if I start it conservatively, perhaps I will be able to push a little bit more power out. That steep section you just saw there was merely a taster of what's to come. Yeah, an aperitif, if you will. And I'm about to come around the corner and you see the church for which this hill is named. It may be a religious site for some. It is, I guess it could be a site of pilgrimage for locals, but it's really the hardest section. The road snakes around this church from the bottom to the top in one very small bend, and it's just around this right-hand corner that the first time I did this climb, I put my foot down as a 17-year-old. Really, really tough bit of road. I think it's steeper than is being represented here, because it feels like a wall. It feels like the road is vertical ahead of you, and there's no frames of reference to really help with that. But I tell you what, meeting that van there didn't help. Maybe seeing the van go down will give you an idea of how steep it was, but his brakes burnt out stopping for me there. This crash barrier on the side also may help. It is as steep as it looks. Not convinced the 30% on the Garmin is accurate. I'm never convinced when it says 30 or over, but quite possibly, it really is tough going. It really is very slow indeed. So before doing Church Hill on this ride, I had done Ashgwenant coming the other way, and I'd also done the climb called Glyn Ceiriog. Ashgwenant I've featured properly. Glyn Ceiriog was also in that hardest 100 kilometres ride, but it did mean I was pretty tired, and I got no idea what to expect from myself at the moment, like coming back from illness and like time off the bike and inconsistent time on the bike. So just keeping these sort of above 300 watt powers consistently ticking over made me pretty happy. Road surface gets a little bit crappy here, but it's never too bad on this climb. Believe it or not, this is a relatively main road. For people of Glyn Ceiriog who want to go to Llangollen, which are two, I guess, decent sized towns for this area, this is the way you'd go, which blows my mind. It is not the sort of road I would ever want to drive. I'm more confident on my bike on it than on my car. So I struggled on this ride because I had to descend this up Ashgwenant and down here, and you just can't go fast on these descents, and it's something I've been learning more and more, that to hold yourself accountable to average speed or even average power on rides like this is nonsense if you ignore the terrain. When I do these steep hills where descending them is hard, you can't have as high an average power on the ride. 2 weeks ago, my dad and I did a ride with some really long hills that thus had really long descents, but that you could smash it down, wide roads, and I averaged 240 watts for the 5 and a bit hours I was out. What was it, 170k? I think I went harder on this ride, and I only averaged 225 watts, and my average speed was significantly slower. And that's because you can never reap the benefit of steep climbs like this. When I descend, there is no way in hell I am putting out 250 watts as I clasp my brakes for dear life and hope nothing's coming the other way. Whereas on the shallower, longer descents, of course I'm doing that. I'm going as fast as I can. So yeah, there's just some musings as you see me coming up here. I know I'm a cliche, but the rear view camera does not do justice to how steep this is, and you know, maybe this gradient isn't 20%, but it's definitely in the teens. And this is like, now I'd consider myself to have gotten over the hard bit of this hill. This is now just progressing, trying to keep putting the power out, really. And something I'm quite happy about is that when I show you my analysis at the end, the wattage looks quite low for the duration. And I'm realising that's just because I went steady on the false flat on the lead-in. I'm quite happy with the power I'm putting out here. You know, for the shape I'm in at the moment and for where I was in this ride, I'm never going to be getting the KOM on here, and that's okay. I'm putting out a decent effort, which is all I wanted at the moment. Just appearing between the trees ahead of me is a house, and in my head I always think that house is the top. Just push to that house, just keep going. Bit of a morale boost, bit of a target. Spoiler alert from the way I've phrased this, I'm sure you can infer, that house is not the top. And bizarrely, like, I know that, but I can't stop myself thinking it as I get up here. I really think the end is in sight. I can just get to that house and I'll be fine. But that's not always a bad thing. I guess when it means I'm going well over threshold and burning myself out, it might be, but gives you something to fight for. It gives you hope. Sometimes when a climb just seems endless, you almost capitulate, whereas a firm end can really give you something to dig in for. As it starts to level off a little bit, I'll just show you my power analysis. I'm pretty happy with that. I tail off a little bit to the end, but an average of 315 watts for the 10 minutes, like I say, as my third effort after 2 much stronger 10-minute efforts is pretty good. If I came and did this again, seeing that Giles did it in, 6:45, if I were aiming for, let's say, 8 minutes, I should be able to do 380 watts, maybe, for this. So that would be significantly more power than I've put down. You can see that I'm not as near the top as I hoped after that house. And there's one more steep punt, but I do believe over here you reach a plateau as you come to the T-junction that marks the end of this climb. So I'm trying to persuade myself to put a big effort in. I got out of the saddle and legs just did not respond. Like, that power's correct. I mean, 250 watts, I should be able to do that for 6 hours, but I just couldn't do more than that here. The legs were not having any of it. But as we approach the finish, there I am, 53rd place with a time of 9:42. It's nothing to write home about, but it's about a minute faster than my previous PB, as I say, which wasn't remarkable. But to be honest, every time I get up this hill, I'm just happy I've got up it. If you've ever done this hill, if you've ever had to walk up this hill, fair play. If you've ever successfully ridden this hill, you have my respect, because it's really tough. It's really a case of just, can I survive it? And then your time will be what it will be later. But it was great to come and have a go at it. It was great that I'm sort of feeling a bit better about myself, and I'm not going to be tearing up the hills at the minute. But I really enjoyed this whole ride and getting to sort of represent myself well on Church Hill. And you do get rewarded a little bit behind you with the view. I turned left here, and you get a nice view over the Ceiriog Valley as you pay back, which is lovely. Cheers for watching, guys.